My name is Marina, and this is Rapunzel Fiber Arts. I am a knitter, a spinner, sometimes crocheter and weaver and rug hooking enthusiast, and just in general an all-around crafter. This is my channel where I talk about some of my crafting adventures and exploits. Thank you for joining me. So, I want to talk about my stash. This is probably half my stash that you can see behind me today. I have 3 of these big wire shelving units, and in addition to that, I have some bins and bags just stacked on the ground. So I have a lot of fiber, a lot of yarn. I have been spinning and knitting since about 2012. Well, I've been spinning and knitting seriously since 2012. Prior to that, I did a lot of knitting and crocheting, but it really picked up in 2012 when I rediscovered my love of knitting and started spinning for the first time. I have been accumulating stash for about 13 years since 2012, and as you can see, I have a lot of it. I really want to start working through all that I've accumulated, which is why I'm planning on doing a stash down in 2026, where I don't really buy yarn and just try to work through what I have. Part of the problem is that my current studio, this room, cannot contain my entire fiber stash. I have most of it in here, but I also have a couple bins in the basement and a couple bins in my partner's office, just stacked in a corner. And I'd really like to get everything in this room. I think that is one of my main goals, is just to get everything condensed into one room and organized and neat and just nice and condensed into this room is one of my big goals. This stash down was partly inspired by the Wool Sea Knitting podcast. She did a similar stash down during the year of 2025, so she's still wrapping that up. But I really liked watching her videos about it, and it kind of inspired me to do a similar thing. It's not like she invented the idea of a stash down, but I was inspired by watching her videos and decided to endeavor on my own stash down because of that. I had originally considered making a kind of goal weight of yarn and fiber to work through in the year of 2026, but as I thought about it, I kind of realized I don't have a good sense of exactly how much I knit and spin during the course of a year, so I'm just gonna kind of play it by ear, see how much I work through this year, and then use that to kind of extrapolate and see how many years of stash I actually have. If I work through X amount of yarn and fiber in the year of 2026, I can divide my stash by that amount and see how many years of stash I have, which would be helpful information to have, I think. I'm sure you've heard of the phrase stash acquired beyond life expectancy, or SABLE. SABLE? Yeah, SABLE. I keep confusing it with stable, but it's SABLE. And I'm certainly not there yet. I'm still young, I'm only 30, and although I have a lot of stash, I don't think I'm quite to that point. But it would be nice to kind of look at it and be like, okay, I have 5 years of stash or 10 years of stash, just to put it in perspective a little bit. In preparation for this stash down, I have been going through my entire yarn and fiber stash and adding it into Ravelry. I've seen some other people use other platforms to do that, like Airtable, but I really like Ravelry. I like how you can put all of your projects together in one place and all your stash together in one place, and the way that that database works, I think will work for me. So I'm going to stick with Ravelry. As you can see on some of these bins, they have these red labels, as you can see all behind me here. And that is the marker that indicates that that bin has been gone through and inventoried in my stash. That each label says inventoried, just to kind of keep track of what I've done and what I still have to do. At this point, I'm most of the way done, which is very exciting. I still have a couple bins left, and I also have a shelving unit of acrylic and cotton I have to work through, but most of my bins are done, which is very exciting. In addition to doing some Stashdown videos both before and during the year of 2026, I'm considering doing some stash tour videos, kind of showing you what's in all of these bins, because I know that especially with the stickers in front, you can't really see what's inside, and I get a sense that that's of interest to people. So if that's something you would like to see, please go down in the comments and leave me a message letting me know that you'd be interested in watching that. I'm interested in making them, but knowing the size of my stash, it's going to be a lot of work. So I just want to make sure that that's something that you're interested in seeing before I put in a ton of effort and filming and editing and figuring out how I want to do that and putting it on YouTube. So if that's of interest, please let me know and I will endeavor to do it if that's what is interesting to people. So in terms of my 2026 Stashdown, I have 3 main goals. The first is to not buy any new yarn or fiber. This is doable. Like I said, I have a lot of stash. I don't actually need any fiber or yarn, but the temptation is often there, especially when dyers come out with pretty new things, to purchase and acquire new things. But because I really want to get everything into this room, I'm going to try to resist that urge and just work through what I have and work with my handspun, work with my existing yarn, work with the fiber I already have, instead of acquiring new things. So that's number 1. Number 2 is to use as much as I can in the year of 2026. Like I said, I considered doing a goal weight of fiber and yarn to work my way through, but I decided not really to do that and just to see how it goes. It's going to fluctuate a little bit throughout the course of the year, I'm sure, as my interest for spinning versus knitting versus crocheting changes, because I tend to go through seasons with that, where one of those crafts is more enticing than others. But I think overall, I should be able to get a good quantity of stash worked through, both made into garments and spun into yarn. My third goal is to have monthly progress check-in videos on YouTube to see how it goes. So that might end up looking more like every other month, depending on how much I'm getting done and how I'm feeling, how much energy I have to put into YouTube videos. But my goal is to do a series of videos throughout the year of 2026 to show you how it's going. So in addition to my 3 goals, I have a couple rules or guidelines to help me with this Stashdown for 2026. The first, all finished objects and spun yarn completed in 2026 will count towards the final stash used weight. So I'm going to do this based on weight, not on yardage or skeins used. And I'm counting everything that's completed in 2026. So whether it was started in 2026 or 2025 or even earlier, if it's finished in 2026, it'll count towards the finished weight of yarn and fiber. I think that just makes the most sense. Everything right now that is works in progress is counted in my stash. So like, I have a sweater that I'm working on, and all of the yarn for that still is in my stash in Ravelry, even though it's half or more than halfway knit up. So everything completed in 2026 will count towards the final weight. Rule number 2 is that spinning fiber spun into yarn counts as using the weight of the fiber spun. I think this makes the most sense for me. I've seen some people say that handspun yarn counts towards their fibers or their yarn stash increasing. And that's fine. That's personal preference. But I think that in terms of knowing how much I'm working through, adding that to the final weight is more beneficial for me. Additionally, yarn typically takes up less space than unspun fiber, so that's going to help me work towards my goal of condensing my stash and getting it all into this room. Number 3, materials for my Etsy shop don't count towards the weight of stash used or purchased because it's not exactly my stash. The one exception to this is going to be fleeces. Occasionally I'll pull from fleeces to add to my Etsy shop, and that will count from coming out of my stash. But for the most part, I'm going to keep those things separate. So like these small bins behind me are what I call add-ins. They're like silk and silk noil and sparkle and locks. And those are not going to count in my actual stash. Partially because inventorying every single color would be a pain in the butt, but also I don't want to have to do math and deduct it out of my stash every time I make something for Etsy. And then finally, number 4, I'm giving myself a $20 a month pattern budget. I think that's reasonable. It might be a little bit high for what I need, so I might not spend all of that, but I think having some options to add to my pattern library is going to be a good idea, because then I'll be able to be inspired by new patterns and cast on new things that aren't already in my library, which might be a good thing. And I'm going to let those $20 roll over from month to month if I don't spend all of them. So those are kind of the guidelines and rules and goals for this big project. I'm really excited for it. This is kind of a big deal for me. I've been accumulating stash, like I said, for the last 13 years, and to have a year where I'm not accumulating, but instead I'm seeing how much I can work through is pretty exciting for me. So yeah, I'm pumped. I'm pumped for this. I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be a good project to work on, and also get my stash all in this room and organized and a little tidier than it is right now. I'm going to give you a bit of a walkthrough of my stash now. So let's take a look at that. All right, so this is the first of my shelving units. This is mostly spinning fiber. So going in closer, we have some bats and rolags, some more bats and rolags. This is materials for a t-shirt quilt. And then above we have plarn, which is plastic yarn made from disposable grocery bags that I have made. I haven't worked with that in a while, but I like having it in my stash. And then further down we have some fleeces, both undyed and dyed. We have some bags for fleeces, and here is some cotton. And then this is some black Corriedale roving and some black Corriedale locks. Moving further down, we have some more fleece. This is a Shetland fleece. This here is some Romney Rambouillet roving. Some finished objects that I don't really use very often but don't want to get rid of yet. And then here is a bin that's just a bunch of brown BFL top. Moving further down, we have some dyed top. This is mostly merino based with some luxury fibers in there as well. Then we have some more merino and Polworth. This is my embroidery floss and embroidery supplies. This is bins that I have for lock washing, washing locks, raw locks, and making them like ready for combed top spinning. And then this is some drop spindles that I have. And then here we've got some miscellaneous dyed top. And then here we've got some BFL dyed top. That's the first shelving unit. Moving over, sorry, I'm watching my step behind me. I've got some more bins here. We've got a Romney fleece, some more fleece, Cheviot Merino and Southdown Cross, some more dyed top. This is Merino and Targhee fleece. This is all combed top in a variety of materials, Merino and Cormo, and then Cormo and corn silk. We've got some undyed, luxury and miscellaneous fibers. And then this is some Polworth fleece that my guild imported, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago that I am working my way through. Back here we have my acrylic and cotton stash, which is a little bit more miscellaneous. I don't use a ton of acrylic and cotton, but I like having it in my stash for when you need something that's not wool. In this closet, I'll turn the light on. We have some dyed merino top. This is all for Etsy, because I've got a whole rainbow of it for blending bats and rolags. And this is some of that plastic yarn I mentioned earlier, which is really good for crocheting, not so good for knitting. These are like Stop and Shop bags that I turned into yarn and then crocheted with. Then back over here, starting from the top, these are mostly supplies for Etsy. These are finished bats and rolags, kind of scrap bits of rolags and bats. These are some pre-sorted bats that are like materials for bats that I haven't gotten around to carding yet. Below that, we've got my add-ins, which are all pretty clearly labeled. We've got silks and sparkles and silk noil. This bin is locks. And then we've got my samples and extras, some bamboo, and then this is just some white merino that didn't fit in the closet. Here we've got some whips, which are also clearly labeled, but are in hibernation, so they're in this bin. And then we get into some of my commercial sock yarns, more commercial sock yarns, and more commercial sock yarns. And then over here is where some of the really nice stuff is. This is my hand spun shelf, but I've also got some milled roving and fleece, some more fleece. These are all of my leftover swatches and bits of yarn for projects that are completed. These are my hand spun scraps of less than 1 ounce. Here I've got my spinning work in progress bins. So you see this one has to be plied, this has to be skeined, this has to be labeled, and this has to be washed. So you've got like a finished yarn in there that just needs to be washed. And then below that, we've got hand spun. This is my lace and fingering hand spun. My sport, this is one hand spun project that's really quite large. And Goth Mermaid is just the colorway name. This is some sport and DK hand spun. This is my worsted and Aran hand spun. This is my bulkier hand spun, which includes these 2 fleeces. And then here's some more fleeces down on this corner. Then we have some more commercial yarns. This is a sport or DK yarn on cones. These are my worsted yarns and my DK weight yarns. And then over here, we've got just some loose stuff and a puppy dog who's fast asleep. So I've got to go through this stuff still. And there's just junk kind of everywhere that I have to work through. So that gives you a little bit of a sense of my stash. I also have, I think, 8 bins scattered throughout the house. But yeah, that is my fiber stash. So I hope that this project is exciting for you. I hope you liked seeing what my stash looks like with all the very full bins of fiber I have in my studio today. And I hope you're excited for this project and this process and this series of videos. If you want to see more from this series of videos, please subscribe to my channel so that you see them and the algorithm gives you more of my content. I don't want anyone who's interested in watching this to miss stuff. So feel free to subscribe, and like I said earlier, please comment and let me know if you are interested in seeing my stash bin by bin, which will be a lot of videos, or at least 10 videos depending on how I decide to do it. Yeah, they might be long videos, might be short videos. I haven't decided how I want to format those yet, but if you want to see that, please comment and let me know. Comment anything else about my stash. Just be nice. And I guess that's it. So I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Happy crafting. Bye, friends.